Hello and welcome to Feedstuffs 365, the National Hog Farmer. I'm Ann Hess. In partnership with the Protein Pact, the National Pork Board recently highlighted the U.S. pork industry's commitments to pigs, people, and the planet during COP30 in Brazil. Through strategic collaborations, the group participated in multiple COP30 panels, offering data-driven insights aimed at building common ground with global sustainability stakeholders. Joining us to discuss how international sustainability conversations directly influence U.S. farmers' freedom to operate is Jamie Burr, Chief Sustainability Officer at the National Pork Board, and Eric Mittenthal, Chief Strategy Officer with the Meat Institute. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks for having us.
Before we jump into today's discussion, I'd like to remind the audience tuning in, if you have any questions, you can post those there in the chat, or if you're tuning in via social media, you can post those there in the comments. So, Jamie, I understand that Protein Pact partners collaborate across the food system to achieve goals and advance alignment with consumers' values and expectations. Tell us more about that partnership and how it helps demonstrate progress within the animal agriculture sector.
Sure. Thank you, Ann. I will say I'd like to start with, the key aspect from my perspective of this partnership is making sure we share the successes and the progress of pork producers into various audiences. And I'll share a little bit about various audiences here in a little bit. But, with the true intention of making sure that we're protecting the freedom to operate of U.S. pork producers, but we're also, protecting pork on the plate, so to speak. So we're making sure that we're sharing that story of the great progress that pork producers have made for centuries, for decades, but also making sure that the accurate story of nutrition of pork is told as well, because pork is uniquely situated to where we can provide and produce a nutrient dense protein product that we're doing so in a way that protects the land and the water and the air that we all have to live in. And we really do this also through We Care, and We Care aligns really closely with the Protein Pact's sustainability goals and targets as well. And what we're able to do is to take those on-farm data points and pull the entire supply chain, if you will, to where our customers and consumers can hear more about what do pork producers do. So we're using those We Care ethical principles and the goals and metrics associated with We Care to amplify pork producer story. So it's really an opportunity to share in different audiences. And some of the other examples outside of COP would be, we've been spending some time with college food service entities to really share pork's sustainability journey as well. But we've also spent some time with dietitians and nutritionists to where we can amplify pork's story as well. Ann.
Of diverse groups to meet with, to share those We Care principles and let them know what producers are doing on the farm each day. Eric, for those who are not familiar with COP30, tell us what it is and why the Protein Pact was there.
Yeah, COP30 is, COP in general, is the annual UN climate change conference. They've been doing it for 30 years now. And at its core, it's really meant to be negotiations amongst world leaders around how they solve the challenges around climate change. And that revolves around solutions for reducing fossil fuel use around the world, providing funding for nations to limit climate impacts. And over the last several years, food and agriculture has become much more of a focus of the discussion at COPs. Not as much within the formal negotiations with the world leaders, but alongside of that is a whole climate convention where folks interested in climate change from every angle out there, it really discuss avenues to demonstrate improvements and limit impacts on the climate. And as food and agriculture has become had more attention there, animal agriculture has been a topic of discussion. And we attend because we are the experts in animal agriculture. The Protein Pact unites efforts across beef and pork and poultry and dairy and feed, as well as animal health. to tie together the work that's occurring in the industry and have the proof points of how we're making progress, not just on climate, but on animal care and nutrition and worker safety and food safety. And we want to make sure that as the experts, our voices are incorporated into that discussion. And as people are thinking about ways that we might continue to improve and evolve to make sure that we're providing for a healthy planet and healthy people, that the solutions we're able to provide are included in that conversation.
Yeah, and absolutely, in a voice we definitely want to make sure that it's heard there at COP30 is the pork industry. Jamie, how is the pork industry represented at COP30?
Yes, so through the relationship that we have with the Meat Institute, we were able to attend myself, and then also for the first time we were able to take a producer, so Maddie Hokanson from Minnesota, and so what we focused on, or what I focused on, was really some of those data points related to how pork has made progress. Give you an example, as we entered into the COP grounds, if you will, there's a sign out front that said something along the lines of livestock, the chief contributor to climate change, so along that line, which is very interesting because if you look at the United Nations data and you look at global greenhouse gas emissions, well, livestock only contributes 12% of global GHG emissions. So it is really about taking the time to share data points. It was my real main focus. And then Maddie was able to share, her family's legacy of 7 generations being on the farm and being able to share from her perspective how important it is to not only be sustainable so that she can continue that legacy, but she's just providing a place for her 2 boys, who she's raising right now, to be the 8th generation. So it was really just a chance to be able to share stories, share data, but also that's what's very different about COP from any place that we go to is there's also a lot of, if you will, anti-meat or anti-animal ag in attendance. And it gives us the opportunity to have candid conversations with them, to learn their perspective, but to also share ours as well and see where we can find some common ground to maybe work together and to understand each other more. Because at the end of the day, there's still more than 600 million people in the world that are malnourished. And it is important for us to find ways to continue to drive that number down so that food insecurity is not a concern.
I know we mentioned that this isn't even your first COP that you've been to, Jamie. So how do these conversations, these global presentations, how do they help pig farmers in the U.S.?
Sure. So the biggest thing is sharing stories with data, with proof points. Those that are against our industry have their own data, and I'll leave it at that. And it's just important that we have data that's on the farm that we can present as facts, which is why it is so important and really want to issue this call to action to our producers to be involved in the Pork Care's impact report process. Please go to porkcheckoff.com and sign up. The more data that we can have, the more that we can protect freedom to operate and protect the ability for pork to still be on the plate.
So even if they're not at these meetings, they're not attending in Brazil, Dubai, other places that COP's been, this data is really critical for your conversations you're having.
It absolutely is. And I like to use the formula to try to explain how important it is. And that is principles times practices times proof equals trust, where principles are we care. The practices are things like PQA and 2QA to explain what we do within animal welfare and how storied of a program that PQA is, that started way back in 1989 to show how we are progressing with animal welfare. And then proof is that on-farm data. And if without that on-farm data, then the trust factor becomes 0. So it's just important that we have all 3 of those to increase public trust.
As we wrap up our discussion today, I'd like to ask you both any key takeaways from your experience there at COP30 you'd like to leave our audience with today. Eric, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen over the last several years is there's just a great deal of common ground, even with groups who it may not seem like it. And the reality is that we're all trying to produce food in ways that is good for the planet and good for people. Animal protein plays a critical role in that discussion. And there's opportunity for animal protein to be a part of healthy and sustainable diets. And I think there's greater recognition at places like COP of that reality. And it's through the proof points we're able to bring and through understanding that we have common ground, things that we agree on, and let's focus on those things and advancing ways that we can drive continuous improvement in the industry that's backed by data. And that opens up a whole new world of conversation, a whole new world of partnerships that really allows us to make progress and demonstrate that to the consumer.
Jamie?
I think I'll just tie back to an earlier comment where there is a narrative out there that animal agriculture is a significant impact on the environment. And, 2 years ago, when I attended the first COP, the anti-meat or diet shift narrative was pretty strong from my perspective. And one of the things that I walked away from Brazil was I didn't think that that narrative was as strong. So I think that we're making some progress towards, showing and highlighting the importance of how important it is to keep farmers on the farm and how important it is to have nutrient-dense food so that we can, again, continue to solve for food insecurity.
Jamie Burr, National Pork Board, and Eric Mittenthal, Meat Institute, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
For you and our audience, we thank you for tuning in today. For more coverage and conversations on pork industry related topics, be sure to check out the Feedstuffs and National Hog Farmer websites, as well as our social media channels. For Feedstuffs and National Hog Farmer, I'm Ann Hess.